Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, take just a minute, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, I am very excited about this week's guest, who is just about one of the absolute rock stars of thru hiking. I had a chance to chat with him a couple seasons ago when he had finished his calendar year Triple Crown, and it is my pleasure to welcome back onto the podcast, Brandon Weis. How's it going, Brandon?
Hey, going good. Good to be back.
Now, last time we talked, you were on the John freaking Muir Pod. Now you're on Hiker Trash Radio. What do you think?
I think it sounds like a good upgrade to me.
Nice. All right. Now, I know that last time we talked, you revealed the story about your trail name. And I know with the miles under your trail runners, you've got a trail name. How many miles do you have?
About 15,000 at this point.
15,000 and counting. And what is your trail name?
It is Horsepower.
Okay. And how did you come by that trail name?
The short version is my first ever backpacking trip was a big group trip in the High Sierra through my college. So we had a bunch of old school heavy gear. Our packs were, everybody's was really heavy, but I was the biggest guy there, so I felt like I should carry the most weight. So my pack was probably around 70 pounds most days, and just came from that, being the pack mule of the group and having a lot of horsepower in the tank.
Horsepower is better than pack mule or donkey.
Yeah, I like it. It's a little unique. I've never met another one out on the trail, so I guess it's a good thing for now.
Nice. And how you said you're a big guy. How big are you?
About 200 pounds, 6'2".
Okay. All right. That's decent size. I'd come up to your shoulder, maybe a little bit higher.
Hey, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly average.
Nice. All right. Now, when you're on last time, we talked about the pro tip insight of the week that comes towards the end of the episode. That is now transformed. It's also been rebranded to the hiking hack. A little more hiking related. So same concept, though. When we get to the end of the episode, I'm going to turn to you and ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised.
Mm-hmm. It's getting tougher now that I'm coming on the show a few times. You're getting all my tricks out of me.
That's right. You got to have something in the tank. Got to have something left for us. Plan on it. All right. Here's another segment we've been doing.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. Have you heard of 6 Moon Designs, Brandon?
I have. I've never used any of their stuff, but I've heard a bunch of good things.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the plug. Now, I love to talk about gear on the podcast. Love to hear about the most important item in my guest's adventure gear. If you were preparing for your next adventure and I was the one packing your bag, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Give me all the specifics on that piece of gear and tell me why you got to have it out there. And this could be any type of item. It could be gear. It could be apparel. It could be a luxury item. So Horsepower, what is your must-have piece of gear out there?
Yeah, so I know in the previous episodes I've been on, I gave boring answers like my favorite shoe or favorite backpack, things like that. So I'll switch it up this time. And I'm going to go with a good old school pair of wired earbuds.
Wired?
You got to have them out there, especially if you're like, most of my hiking has been alone. So if you're around other people and can talk all the time, but you don't need them as much. But if you're spending a lot of time alone, you're going to want to listen to some music you like, some podcasts. I don't know. I know there's a few I like. Hiker Trash Radio. You're going to want to hear that out on the trail. So you're always going to want to listen to a little bit of something here and there. So you're always going to want a good old school pair of wired earbuds, which you don't need to charge, unlike the new fancy AirPods. So that's my recommendation.
Okay. Now, as I see it, if you're out there by yourself, you don't have friends, there's 4 options, right? You could sing to yourself, which I discovered. I don't know the complete lyrics to any song other than Happy Birthday. I know the choruses of a lot of songs, but not the entire version of the song. That's out for me.
Mm-hmm.
Second is you could just play your device without any earphones.
Ooh, that's wild.
No headphones, right? That's kind of a bit of noise pollution, though, right? The people you pass aren't interested in hearing AC/DC out there.
That's true.
Fleetwood
And it
Mac.
would kill your battery.
And it would kill your battery. Then you have your wired headphones that you mentioned. You could also go the wireless headphones. But then, as you pointed out, that seems to be an issue with charging.
Yeah, I've never used them out on the trail, but I just envisioned that would not. I just wouldn't like having one more thing to worry about charging when I get into town. And also, I don't know. I figured that'd be pretty easy to lose with as small as they are. So I like sticking with the wired ones when I'm out hiking.
Okay. Now, what is your base weight out there?
In the summertime, I'd say it's usually around 10 or 11. And then in more winter or shoulder season backpacking, closer to 15, 16.
Wow, you really bulk up to 15 pounds, huh?
Yep. I like to stay warm.
Nice. Now, keep us, I'll have to edit that out. To keep us talking about some gear, what we're going to do.
It's the hiking poll.
A hiking pole spelled with 2 L's, like a survey, not like the thing you carry in your hands out there. And this is a 7-question survey, as you've been through this before. That's going to help me give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being completely insane, 100 being completely sane. Now, there is an automatic 30-point deduction for anybody who has done the calendar year Triple Crown. So horsepower, your highest possible score tonight is 70.
Let's ride.
Let's ride. Now, I've got 3 sets of questions here for repeat customers. How many times have you been on the podcast?
This is my 3rd, I believe.
Okay. I need to go to the 3rd set of questions then, I guess. All right. So 3 questions. This is not rapid fire. Give me a little bit of explanation for each answer. And that's going to help me with my scoring. So question number 1. I know in the past you've answered questions that have had multiple choice answers. Some of these are open-ended. You can just feel free to pull it out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question number 1. What are the top 3 topics of conversation on the trail for you? When you're out there with a buddy and you're out there in the middle of nowhere, what are you guys talking about? What are the top 3 items?
For me, I feel like I'm going to differ from most people. For most people, it's typically food, bathroom habits, all that. But I have my other things I like outside of the world of hiking too. So I'll say number 1 for me is football. When I was on Trail Professor earlier this year, we could talk college football for hours on end. Meanwhile, the other guy with us was just lagging behind lackadaisically because he had no idea what we were talking about. But we were having a grand old time just discussing the intricacies of football, rivalries, and everything like that. Everything, getting ready for the year, how the last year went, how this year is going to be so much better, and we're definitely going to win this time. All the good stuff.
Now, who's your football team? Who's your college football team?
Ohio State, of course. The Ohio State, yes. This year's the year, I hope.
All right, that's 1.
Outside of football, I'm also a huge movie guy. I'll pretty much discuss movies with anyone I'm with out on the trail, whether they like it or not. If they're not a big movie person, they're probably not going to enjoy me too much or just be confused most of the time by my references that they're not going to get. So yeah,
what is your favorite genre of movie?
I'd say drama, mostly dark dramas.
Can you give me an example?
For example, my favorite movie of all time is Requiem for a Dream, which is pretty dark. Not sure if you've seen it.
Wow, yes. Horsepower is deep.
A lot of ones like that. Of course, Interstellar, Black Swan, big fan of Darren Aronofsky. Just that dark genre of drama.
Wow, you're not just your ordinary hiker trash. You got some depth to you. I like it.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay. And topic number 3.
So we got football and movies. That's pretty much most of my personality along with hiking. Then for number 3, I don't know. I'll pretty much just say whatever. I guess I'll be basic here. Whatever food we're getting when we get to the next town we get to. The answer is usually pizza or chicken wings, but it's always fun to talk about the other possibilities also.
All right. It's a great set of answers for question number 1. Question number 2, the best trail name you've ever encountered out there.
There are a couple that are up there for that one, but I think my personal favorite was a guy named Felony Dan. And at first I wasn't sure if it was a joke or not, and then I think it turned out he got a felony for pirating movies or something like that. But that was probably my personal favorite.
Now, how did he introduce himself to you? You say, "Hey, I'm Horsepower," and he shakes your hand and says, "I'm Felony Dan."
Fortunately, someone else introduced him first, so he didn't have to do that. I'm not sure what his normal routine was.
Did you set up your tent further away from him once you learned his?
No, I'm a pretty trustworthy guy, so I was probably pretty close to him that night.
All right. Who did I talk to who said they met somebody and his trail name was Poop Hands, and he introduced himself as he was shaking their hand, which is a little awkward, right?
Yep. That's a tough one to come back from.
All right. Question number 3. Toilet paper, bidet, leaves, or snow?
Always toilet paper. Done leaves and snow as an emergency. Still don't really like it. Never even played around with a bidet. Don't really plan on it. Always toilet paper. And I've ran out a few times, and that's one of the more stressful parts of hiking that I don't enjoy, especially when you're in the desert of New Mexico with nothing around besides sharp objects, or if you're in pine country where there's really only pine needles around. There's a lot of lose situations out there if you're not carrying enough toilet paper.
Wow. Yes. You don't want to use a cactus or pine needles. That doesn't sound very effective at all.
Nope, not really.
But Horsepower, I have talked to a lot of people, as you might imagine, and quite a few of them swear by the Pocket Bidet.
Yeah, I think that's like a cult. I'm not sure if they actually like it or if they're just there to spread the word around.
The cult of the Pocket Bidet. I like it. All right. Question number 4. Breakfast in camp, on trail, or no breakfast?
I'd say my food habits on trail are quite different from most people. So I'll pretty much eat half my calories either in my tent in the morning or in my tent at night. So when I wake up, I'll eat a big breakfast of good tasting high sugar foods that really that I want to eat. So like Oreos, candy, or something that actually sounds appetizing rather than oatmeal or soggy ramen noodles or something else gross. Basically something to get me out of bed in the morning that's good. Any kid's dream, waking up having candy and cookies for breakfast. So that's my breakfast. And then I'll pretty much just inhale a bunch of peanut butter and high calorie, high protein foods before bed.
Okay. So peanut butter. So Oreos for breakfast and peanut butter for dinner?
Peanut butter and tuna. A big spread.
Peanut butter and tuna.
Mm-hmm. Not necessarily together, but mostly just for the protein.
Got it. I envisioned you for a moment slathering your tuna with a lot of peanut butter.
Not yet.
Not that far gone yet. Okay. Question number 5, solo hiking or tramley?
I'm not even sure if I have permission to answer that question because I've never really hiked in a tramley. Of my 15,000 miles, if I had to guess, probably over 13,000 are alone. So I much prefer being with other people, having other people around, because I've pretty much had enough of myself by this point. But just haven't been able to link up with people on the trails I wanted to do, or just given the time frame I wanted to do them in. So like doing the County or Triple Crown, it's hard to find other people that are that stupid that want to hike that fast and push themselves that hard. I did find another goofball for 1,000 miles named Hammer that we did 1,000 miles together. But other than that, I was pretty much alone that whole year. And then in 2022, with all the trails I did, I was alone for most of the year, but linked up here and there with a partner or maybe a couple people here and there. But much prefer the company of other people. Just have to do solo a lot of the times, given logistics.
That's interesting that 13,000 out of your 15,000 have been solo, but yet you say that you prefer hiking with people. You prefer being around people.
Maybe they just don't like hiking with me. I don't know.
That could be. Now, how do you deal with the solitude? How do you deal with the loneliness?
Yeah, so I don't know. People ask me that all the time, especially on the County or Triple Crown, given how much of it was alone, and especially hiking in winter, not seeing any humans, even outside of not seeing through hikers really most of the time. But it never really bothered me. I think nowadays with having cell service and being able to call friends here and there every couple of days was a big help. And at the same time, just, I don't know, being comfortable with yourself. Listening to podcasts and music certainly helps, because not necessarily the loneliness would get to me, but like hiking in winter, not seeing anybody else for days on end, just the sheer, if I didn't listen to podcasts or music, I would have just focused on how miserable I was all the time. So also just when you're not around other people, you have to find a way to distract yourself from how harsh thru I can be at times.
You ever run out of thoughts?
I run out of happy thoughts, but never really run out of thoughts. There's always something there, always something new to think about, always some new worry to think about, some potential problem ahead on the trail, timeline you got to keep for the goal you want to have, food situation, water situation. There's always stuff to think about.
Question number 6, rank the following in your order of preference. All right. Severe uphill for 1 mile, severe downhill for 1 mile, or a 20-mile road walk.
Whew, okay. Severe, I'm going to go road walk, 20-mile road walk. Honestly, I love road walks most of the time. If it's pavement, that's not as good, but as long as it's a dirt road, I really don't mind it. I joke around with people, like the partners that I've hiked with these last few trails, and I say the older I get, the more I hike, the more I become like a cat and like a car. I hate getting rained on, I hate getting wet, and I love road walks and easy hiking. I really don't mind road walks. Aside from just how easy they are, I really have stopped caring about water on road walks. As long as there's decent number of cars on it, I won't really carry much water. I'll just hold out my water bottle whenever I'm thirsty, and then cars stop and, hey, you need anything? Oh, yeah, I could use some water. Oh, yeah, I don't mind. Oh, you want a beer? Yeah, sure thing. I'll take one. I'll take 2. So I don't mind the free drinks that come with road walks also. Been blessed with a lot of free beverages while doing those. I like road walks. And then for seconds, the second option, I'll go with a severe downhill. I'm not at the age yet where my knees are crumbling, so I really don't mind downhills, but I absolutely despise uphills. So that is going to be by far the last one for me. And I don't really know, in a few years when my knees do start to decay like most people and they hate going downhill because their knees hurt so bad, at that point I think I might just hate all of hiking, because I hate uphills now. So if I also hate downhill, I'm not really going to like anything, because there's not really any such thing as flat. So that's where I'm at.
All right. That's a very detailed answer. I like that a lot. There are only 6 possible combinations of those 3 items, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I've heard a different one every time I've asked that. You're the first person to put road walk first. And I love the fact that you're not afraid to ask for trail magic, right? I mean, yeah. You invite it, you make it happen. And so don't be afraid to ask. That's some trail wisdom right there. That's nice.
Oh, yeah. Especially in those southwestern states, I've realized every single person carries water in their car. So I should have saved that for my hiking hack. Darn it.
Well. Got to find something else now. Hey, what is the friendliest state out there? Where have you found the most people who are willing to stop, help you out, do trail magic, whatever, however you might want to categorize friendly?
It is tough. Honestly, off the top of my head, I might go with New Mexico, just given how much help I got with water. And there were a lot of road walks in that state, so you are around cars and people a lot. And I got offered a lot of water, a lot of snacks along the roads, people just helping out in general a ton in New Mexico.
And what is the most unfriendliest state? People blow by you at 70 miles an hour without even a glance.
I feel like it's got to be something in the Northeast. Maybe New Hampshire, Massachusetts, one of those stereotypical jerk states. Probably one of those.
Okay. Now, what is the most unusual thing you've been offered on the trail?
Unusual.
This is not part of the hiking poll. I'm just curious. You talked about water. You talked about beer.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything unusual. No crazy drugs or anything like that. I'm not sure if it's unusual, but I was half invited myself to a party with a family that was throwing a big get-together in New Mexico one night. I was walking by their house and just asked to camp on their property, and they were throwing a big party that night, so invited me to come up, have a good time with them, and it was a really fun night. But the next morning wasn't so fun because I was pretty hungover.
Now, did you know they were throwing a party before you asked to camp on their property, or did you find out about that after?
I did not. It was afterwards. I just saw a big group of people gathered. Hey, you mind if I camp on the back of your property? Yeah, no problem. And then, hey, come up here. What are you doing? And then after the what are you doing question, there's about 100 more questions after that. So it was a good night. It was fun.
Fair to classify you as the luckiest guy on the trail?
No, definitely not. That is Professor.
That's Professor?
Hearing his stories of all the trail magic he got compared to mine was, we lived 2 different lives. It was insane. That man was lucky, but great guy, so he deserves it.
All right. Question number 7, back to the hiking poll. What's on your head out there? Ball cap, floppy hat, straw hat, sun hoodie, no hat, some other option? What do you got?
But yeah, I'm always a straw hat or sun hat, one of those. I really don't get how people wear baseball hats just because with as windy as it is a lot of the time, I don't get how that doesn't blow off. But I never really use those other than when I lose my sun hat or straw hat and then I have to buy a baseball cap at Dollar General or something like that. But my preference is definitely a big, funny looking sun hat.
Okay. You have pictures of that you can share with us?
Of course.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, horsepower, stand by. I got to do some math. Got to use all 20 digits here because I was an English teacher.
Oh, yeah.
This doesn't come easy. So I say I got to carry the 3, and divide that by √5, multiply that by pi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going to adjust for the pucker factor of hiking in New Mexico and you ran out of toilet paper about 20 miles ago. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So throwing that in, that slight adjustment, I come up with a score of 41.
Higher than I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your score last time?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Probably
I thought this was a momentous event in your life coming on the podcast.
Yeah. I'll definitely remember next time. We'll make a deal there.
41. I want you to get a hat. Put that on the hat.
We'll do.
On a big floppy sun hat.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Hey, before we get too far down the trail, I'm very familiar with your story, but I know we have maybe some first-time listeners or some listeners who didn't hear your previous episodes. Remind us about where you grew up and how you got involved in thru hiking.
Yeah. So I grew up in Northwest Ohio, which,
Not
by my
surprising.
opinion, what's that?
Not surprising with Ohio State University being your
Of course. You don't really have an option. But yeah, I grew up in Northwest Ohio. By my judgment, probably one of the flattest areas in the country. When I was going on like training runs for my first big hike, I would go on 20, 30-mile runs and gain less than 100 feet of elevation. So it is very flat here. And then went on my first ever backpacking trip in 2018 would have been through Ohio State. And that was out in the High Sierra. Accidentally signed up for that trip, but ended up being probably the most life-changing experience I've ever had. Before that, I had a very set plan how my life was going to go. And then after that, I just caught the bug of hiking, being outdoors, doing things outside of the ordinary. And 3 years later, found myself going for a Calendar Triple Crown. And then I told myself that was probably going to be the last big hiking I've ever done. And then the year after that, I did about another 5,000 miles. Then here we are now.
Wow. And what does your family think of your life choices?
Verbally, they say they're okay with it, but I'm sure they much rather I would have stuck to going to law school like I had planned. But we all make choices. We live the lives we live, and as long as we're happy, we're doing all right.
That's all. That can always be a choice. The law will still be there.
Yeah, I think.
Now, I know you said earlier that you ran into Professor and Constance. You guys hiked the Sheltowee Trail?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. And when people came across the 3 of you, did they realize exactly who they were in the company of?
The thing with the Sheltowee is it's still a pretty young trail, so there's not a ton of other thru hikers out there. We would occasionally come across day hikers, but we're not exactly Justin Bieber or Leonardo DiCaprio. So nobody really recognized us unless they specifically came out there to meet us. So it wasn't too bad. But it was still funny. Yeah, the 3 of us being together, just knowing how many miles have been covered between the 3 of us. And now we're just doing this kind of small by our past history standards trail. But it was a really fun time, really great trail.
It's like just to put this in context for our listeners, it's like you go to 7-Eleven to buy a lottery ticket and you run into the Beatles. That's what this is. These guys are like rock stars of the trails. They've done so much, accomplished so much out there. And it tickles me that you might encounter people on the trail that even have conversations with them. And they really have no concept of who they're dealing with.
The Beatles. Thank you, Doc. I think you're giving us a little too much credit, but I'll take it.
I don't think so. Yellow Submarine all the way. Now, what are you doing these days to finance your adventures? How are you saving up to take these trips?
Yeah, so I've gone corporate now. Got a normal full-time adult finance job. So yeah, money is actually coming in now. I'm not not just bartending on the side anymore or just saving up for the immediate next adventure, gone corporate.
You've gone corporate. What kind of financial activity are you involved in?
It's a financial controller job, basically running the finances for a real estate company.
Okay. All right. And when did you land that job?
About a month ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Been going well.
And do you feel constrained or constricted by the four walls of the office?
Not so much the walls, but sitting in a chair for 9 hours straight is still a wild concept, but I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm. And when they interviewed you for the position, did your trail adventures come up?
Yeah, I don't even try to hide that, just because the way I view it, if it's a kind of place that isn't interested in that or doesn't look at that as strength or a statement of character, that's not really a place I want to work anyways. With this job, I know they definitely looked at it as, this guy has done this. He clearly is capable of anything.
That's right. That's right. That's one of the powerful lessons from the trail is that if you can do this, you can do a whole lot. And just on the record, I would hire you, Professor or Constantine, for any job that I'm involved with, just so I could hear some stories and talk.
Yeah, just hire me like the jester or the local clown, just to go around and tell stories.
That's right. Now, do you have a background in finance?
Yeah, that's what my degree is in.
Okay, so you had a background, you have a degree in finance, and we're considering law school till the trail called you away. And now you've landed this job.
Correct.
Did you tell them that you need your summers off?
No, I did not ask for that out of the gate.
All right. So how are you going to get your hiking in?
That's to be determined. Right now, I'm just going through that job. I really want to get my book out. That's my main focus right now. But as far as the hiking adventures, they're just on hold at the moment because I'm also dealing with kind of I don't know if a long-term is the right word or chronic is the right word, but a bit of an injury I've been dealing with since January. So I don't even really have anything on the horizon given how limited I've been and how limited I probably will be for a considerable amount of time.
What is the injury?
So my back has been bothering me since January. Didn't really know what it was for a while. Then it turned out I had some bulging discs. But now I don't know. The doctors don't really know if that's exactly what's causing the pain because it doesn't seem that way. It's a lot going on, but I'm determined to take it nice and slow, do it the right way, and get better no matter how long it takes.
Okay. Is it lower back or upper back?
Lower back. Feel like an old man.
That is tough. Yeah, you feel like you're 56, like me.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you're going to give us a quick refresher on what exactly is a calendar year Triple Crown. And then we're going to talk about what you've been up to lately. And we're going to hear about this book that you just referenced. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from our advertisers. We're going to pay some bills, and we will be right back. And welcome back. We're talking to Brandon Weis, aka Horsepower, aka not the luckiest man on the trail. That goes to Professor. We heard a little bit about his new day job, also his injury that has taken him off the trail for a little bit here. We referenced this thing called a calendar year Triple Crown. I know a lot of our listeners are very familiar with that. We've had a lot of calendar year Triple Crowners. Not that there are a lot of them in the world, but a lot of those that have completed the calendar year Triple Crown have been on the podcast. We actually did an episode earlier this year with the 4 calendar year Triple Crowners from 2022. That was co-hosted with Jeff Garmar. That was a lot of fun. For those who are tuning in for the first time, are new to the hiking world, are unsure of what is this thing called the calendar year Triple Crown, can you give us a definition?
Sure. As most of the listeners probably know, the Triple Crown of hiking is made up of the 3 iconic American long trails, the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. Totaling all those together is somewhere between 7,000 and 7,500 or 7,600 miles, I think. So to do all those in 1 year, that's a crazy challenge or concept or idea. The first guy to ever do it did it in 2000 or 2001, one of those. And since then, more people have gone on to do it, a few more every year as of late. And when I set out to do it in 2021, 10 people had finished it. And then I was lucky number 13 after finishing it that year. Yeah, that's the general outline.
I think we're up to 18 now. I think the 4 guys that I talked to were 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah. And
growing by the year.
you may be familiar with some of those names. Kansas Express.
Yep.
And Quadzilla.
Yep. Of course.
Professor, of course. And the fourth was, I'm drawing a blank, and I have to apologize. Boomerang. That's right. Boomerang. Yeah. He does not have a strong social media presence, so I don't see his stuff at all. And that's probably why it temporarily left my brain what his name was. So yeah, thank you. Boomerang. Yep. All right. Now it sounds, just hearing it at first blush, it sounds okay. I would just hike one and then the other and then the other. And I would go, I don't know, maybe northbound, then southbound, then northbound, or I know it's more complicated than that. How did you approach your calendar, your Triple Crown? How did you structure the order in which you did it?
Yeah, so for simplicity's sake, I really just wanted to do all three trails straight through. I started out on the Appalachian Trail in January, and then I really wanted to go all the way through Maine and just finish that all in one go for logistical easiness, but that didn't end up happening. My general outlook was I want to do all three trails straight through, but my realistic goal was just start early in January, go as far as I possibly can on the Appalachian Trail, and then I'll head west when I hit like a point where I can't go anymore because of the snowpack, because of the weather. So when I hit that point in Vermont where I simply couldn't move faster than like a quarter of a mile per hour, I went to New Mexico, did basically the state of New Mexico and a little bit of Colorado on the CDT, and then finished that somewhere around mid-April, and then started on the Pacific Crest Trail at the Mexican border on April 26th, and then headed north, did that all in one go, and then hopped on a train, headed to Glacier National Park, and headed south from the Canadian border to finish the CDT to where I ended, and then did a bonus 300 miles playing around Colorado for a few days. And then...
Because what the heck? Why not? Let's get
Yeah, why not? You're already there.
Yeah.
And then went up to Maine and started at Katahdin, and then headed south to finish where I ended I got off the trail in Vermont to go to New Mexico.
Okay.
And that was late October.
All right. So you started January, finished late October. That's a full 10 months on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
And the total mileage was, is it 7,700?
I don't remember what the total mileage was for that, because after that I extended the trip and I ended up attempting to do 10,000 miles that year, ended up failing, but I extended the trip and went and did the Arizona Trail. So after the Arizona Trail, it totaled out to 8,292 miles.
Nice. And I know that Professor last year, he was aiming to set the record for most miles hiked in a calendar year. He fell a little bit short, but he was definitely above 10,000 miles. Was he?
No,
not?
That was the goal. But he ended up being, I think he was about if I remember right, I think he was about 200 miles more than me. So I think he was around 84, maybe 85, 8600.
Okay. All right. I knew 10,000 was either the goal or what he had accomplished and fell short of. Okay.
That was the goal. Only one, somehow a guy named Swami did that sometime back in the 2000s, I think. And after attempting it and failing, not even coming close by the end of the year, and seeing the professor do the same, it really is just an insane number.
What does it take to do that?
Aside from extreme physical luck with just your body holding up for that long, really just mentally being on every day for 365 days in a row is intensely great, intensely challenging. Because I ended up quitting around December 1st, I think, because I finished the Arizona Trail, and then my plan was to do the Buckeye Trail supported, basically just run the Buckeye Trail in December because it's mostly all roads, super flat. I figured, it'll be easy to cover big miles because I had to average, I think, 43 miles per day on the Buckeye Trail to be able to get 10,000 miles. So my plan was to just run that supported, but ended up quitting on the first day because I got back to Ohio. It was cold. It was snowing. The wind was blowing 40 miles per hour over the plains. I was just like, why did I think this was a good idea? I don't want to be doing this anymore. So I got to the point where maybe I could have went a little bit farther, but mentally I was just so drained from the year, from having pushed so hard, that I couldn't really go any farther.
Now talk about the mental game and its impact on what you're trying to accomplish out there. Whether you are doing the 35-mile Trans Catalina Trail, or if you're doing a calendar or triple crown, talk about the impact of the mental game.
Yeah, so for me, I think the reason I've been successful at some of the goals I've set is just setting the goal, being singularly focused on that at all costs, and really not seeing any other option but to achieve that. So, for example, on the calendar triple crown, I was so singularly focused on that. I had basically spent the whole 9 months before leaving preparing every day for the trip. Almost every single thing I was doing, besides a few recreational activities, having fun here and there, was focused towards preparing myself for that journey. And then while I was on the journey, I was so focused about it. That's really all I thought about all the time. I never really thought about quitting or even not finishing. I really always 100% believed that I was going to finish. And I think that's a big reason why I did. The thought of quitting never even crossed my mind until I was taking a rest day, basically, in Bend, Oregon. And one of my friends randomly texted me, like, "Hey, have you ever thought about quitting?" I was like, "No, not once, actually, so far, but thanks for putting that in my head now." So other than that, by the time I finished the calendar year Triple Crown, the thought of quitting, not finishing, taking it easy, giving up, never entered my head once because I was so dead set on that one goal. Now, after I extended the goal and went for 10,000 miles in Arizona, the thought of quitting started to get in my head. And then once that seed got planted, that just wouldn't really go away. And that kind of doubt just kept building.
Yeah, I like that you referred to it as a seed, because I think once that seed of doubt is planted, it tends to grow quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
especially after as long of a year as it had been, having been through so much already. And then when that just starts going in my head, and I was like, at that point, I'm like, it should have came sometime. But it's so much I'm putting myself through. It's reasonable that it comes now. Maybe I should quit. Maybe this is crazy. Maybe I should give up. And that just an echoing voice in your own head all day.
yeah, and hiking, especially those long trails like that, or multiple long trails, it's a grind. You've got to grind it out, and grinding it out takes mental toughness. And you can take that skill and apply it to many aspects of your life. If you're good at keeping that seed of doubt away and being able to grind and keep going, you can be very successful in a lot of areas of your life.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, we did a full in-depth talk. I think our first episode on the calendar Triple Crowner, we talked about some other trails, I think, in the next episode. But what have you been up to since the last time we spoke? What trails have you been on?
In 2022, I did, I think it was 6 or 7, maybe 8 trails. I lost count by that point because I was doing a bunch of smaller ones. But in 2022, I did the Pinhoti Trail, Benton MacKaye Trail, the Oregon Desert Trail, and the Bigfoot Trail, which I believe we talked about all those last time we spoke. But then I also, the rest of that year, did the Pacific Northwest Trail and the Colorado Trail and the Hayduke Trail, all in 2022.
Okay, and rank those 3 in order of difficulty.
Hayduke 1, not even close, and then Pacific Crest Trail 2, and then a huge drop off, and then the Colorado Trail.
Not Pacific Crest Trail, Pacific Northwest Trail?
Yes.
Northwest, yeah. And so what are the distances of each?
So the Pacific Northwest Trail is I think it's 1,250 miles. And the idea is it's from the Continental Divide to the coast. So it starts in Glacier National Park in Montana, and then basically rides near the Canadian border to the Pacific Ocean on the Olympic Peninsula.
So east-west trail.
Yep, which is a little unusual as far as long distance trails go. So the weather window for that one is tighter than most trails, which is one of the specific challenges there, along with grizzly bears, dealing with tides out on the ocean, and a few other things that are always fun to play around with.
So what is the window to hike that? Is it like a June to August, June to September?
So if I remember right, I believe it's basically the normal time frame is July 1st until late September, but then by late September, you can start to get into trouble with early season snow up in the Olympic Mountains. But like the year I started, I had planned on starting July 1st, but the snowpack in Glacier and along the Canadian border was still so insane. It was basically impossible to start that early. That year, basically everyone had to start around July 15th and push back the start dates more. So that window even got smaller.
And you mentioned bears and tides. Any experience with either one of those during that trip?
Yeah, I don't think we'll have time on this podcast, but I got into a bit of an altercation with a grizzly bear when I was
Oh,
inside my tent one
hang on.
night.
Horsepower. When you lead with, I got into an altercation with a grizzly, we're going to take some time. I need to hear
Yeah,
the story.
yeah. Again, I used the word altercation. It wasn't an all-out brawl. It wasn't an all-out fight. It was more of a verbal disagreement. So I had a really tough day of hiking. I did an alternate that was really scenic. It was called the Northwest Peak Alternate on the Pacific Northwest Trail. Really scenic alternate. If you're doing that trail, you should do it. But it is challenging. It is very physically demanding. So by the time I got back to the regular trail, I did a few more miles and then made camp for the night at this unusual spot because the area I was hiking in was on the side of a mountain for an extended period of time. So there really wasn't anywhere to camp. But so I climbed to the top of this ridge and then found this kind of indented area in the grass that looked like someone or something had been there before. So all the sharp plants were dead and you could set up your tent just fine. So I set up my tent there. I'll admit I did get a little bit lazy this night. Normally when I'm in grizzly bear country, I won't eat, brush my teeth, or do anything with any sort of a smell within 2 or 3 miles of my camp. But I did get lazy this night and I brushed my teeth about 100, nah, that's a lie, about 50 yards away from my tent. So pretty close with that toothpaste smell. And then I spit it out on the ground there. So maybe my mistake there doing that. Anyways, to get on with the story, go to bed that night, dead tired. I'm asleep for maybe an hour 45 max. But then I wake up to this sound outside my tent. And it happens all the time while you're hiking. So I was figured it's a deer, something like that. So I was like, hey, go away. And then before I even finished saying go away, it roars. This animal, I didn't know what it was. This animal roars back so loud, so terrifying, so guttural that I went from being half asleep to instantly awake, and now my heart's beating 200 beats per minute. I immediately sat up in my tent. Oh, okay, we're on. I couldn't really fully stand. I couldn't stand up in my tent, but I got on my knees, got my hands in position, ready to strike. Because I was like, all right, if I have to fight this thing, I'm not going down without a fight. I'm gonna put up what I can. I'm gonna do what I can. Grab the head, poke out the eyeballs. Grab the head, poke out the eyeballs. That's really all I can do. After it finishes roaring for about 8 seconds without stopping. So then it takes a breath. I sit there for a half second. Okay, what do I do? So then I yell back as loud as I can at the top of my lungs for, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds. Again, instantly when I start making noise, it roars back. Somehow even louder, even more terrifying, and even more guttural than the first time. And after it roars again for about 6 seconds, I hear it start to run towards my tent. So now is when I start to get really scared. Scared is not the right word. Amped up. Excited isn't the right word. I don't know, jacked up, just adrenaline's pumping, ready to go. I'm ready to fight. I think I'm going to fully fight this thing. So I'm like, all right, grab the head, poke out the eyeballs. Grab the head, poke out the eyeballs. I'm going to roll around. I really don't want to get on my back with it scratching me. I got to grab the head, poke out the eyeballs. That's all I can do. So then in my last possible self-defense before we're going to all-out fight, I let out one final yell as loud as I possibly can. I'm not a big yeller, so I let out one final yell as loud as I possibly can, as loud as I've ever yelled, as loud as I ever will yell. And then I hear this thing come to a stop. Couldn't have been more than inches away from my tent. Come to a stop, sit there for 3 seconds, panting heavily. I can see its breath coming through my tent. And then I hear it start to slowly turn around, take a few steps, and then it runs away. So that all happened, but I'm still so dead tired from the day. I don't want to start hiking again. I don't want to pack up. I still feel like I can't hardly move because I'm so tired. So then I put on my shoes and I run around my tent for 20 minutes, yelling at the top of my lungs to keep this thing away. I don't want it coming back. I want it knowing where I am so it can keep its distance, stay away. So I run around my tent for about 20 minutes yelling, and then I lay back down to try to go back to sleep, which was a dumb, stupid, futile endeavor. So I lay back down, dead tired, ready to fall asleep, but can't physically fall asleep. My heart is still beating 200 beats per minute. So then after about another 15, 20 minutes, I hear this thing come back. And at this time, I wasn't even scared. I was just pissed off. So I immediately put on my shoes, went outside, started yelling at this thing. I finally was able to see it with my headlamp on the highest setting from, 50 yards away or whatever. But I saw it take off running again. And then at this point, I was just pissed off. I wasn't even tired anymore. So I turned on a Rage Against the Machine playlist, started yelling along with the lyrics to keep this animal away. And then I packed up all my stuff and got hiking for the night. And then I hiked, I think it was like 24 more miles. And then I passed out on a picnic table and hitchhiked into a town and slept all day.
That is a story. That is a story. I'm not sure that any of those tactics are included in the Grizzly Handbook.
Yeah, maybe I should have read that before going out there. But I'm also not sure if they address what to do when you're in your tent and it's running at you. But I guess I'll have to read it to find out.
That is a bonkers story. So all that's going through your head is grab him by the head and poke out the eyes.
Yeah, that's really all I could think about, because what else are you going to do? I had bear spray, but it was inside my tent with me. So if I spray it inside my tent, all I was going to do was spray myself in the face rather than the bear.
Now, there's this funny story that was told on this podcast. I thought it was Chad Lubinsky. I confirmed it with him, and he said, no, that wasn't me. So all this time I've been telling the story thinking it was him, and it's not him. So one of my previous guests, I could not figure out which one it was in his tent, and there was a bear, and he pulled out his bear spray and tried to spray the bear through the tent flap. But the wind picked up and blew the flap in front of him right as the bear spray discharged, and it covered him in bear spray. And we talked about, okay, that's the beta method of using bear spray. Alpha is spraying the bear. Beta method is spraying yourself so the bear will find you unappetizing.
Yeah. Hey, if it gets the job done, it gets the job done.
Yes. He was in a lot of pain, but he did not suffer any bear bites. So
that's good.
It's a good thing.
Just temporary blindness.
That is quite a story. That right there, that experience would be enough for me to stay out of grizzly country. Do you have any plans of going back? Any regrets?
The thing is, also, fortunately, that was my last night, I think, in grizzly, or maybe second last night in grizzly country, because that was in Idaho, and the PNT is only in Idaho for the Panhandle, so it's really small. And I crossed the border into Washington soon after, and thankfully, the Grizzlies respect the Washington border. They don't seem to cross that. They just stay in Idaho. So thankfully, I was leaving it then and haven't been back after that, but I will definitely treat things differently from now on. Definitely will not be getting lazy with brushing my teeth at camp anymore. And will definitely hang my food bag farther away from camp. And yeah, just take more precautions overall, because that was a terrifying experience. I had nightmares for about 2 weeks after it.
Do you think that spot where you set up your tent, was that where the grizzly had been sleeping?
I don't know for sure, but that's definitely a suspicion I have, because it was unlike any of the other areas around. And it's like, why would this bear come back here? Why would it come back here after I shoot it away? Bears don't do that. So I don't know. I think that might have been its lair.
That's where I thought you were going with this, because the way you explained it, I thought, well, that's obviously where the bear was sleeping. Mm-hmm. And you horned in on that area. But you think it was either that or maybe a combination of the toothpaste and the food bag being too close.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but a couple different theories contributing.
Got it. Now, because we spent a lot of time on that story, and it was time well spent, believe me, I'm going to leave the talk about the Colorado Trail till next time, because I really want to hear about the Hayduke, and I want to hear about your book. We've talked about the Hayduke on this podcast a number of times. I love to talk about it because it is not really a trail. It's like a route. It's a general idea of a route. And it is a very difficult route in Utah and Arizona, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And it goes through does it go through all 5 national parks in Utah?
Yes. Let's see. It goes through Arches, Canyonlands, Zion, Capitol Reef, and Grand Canyon. I might have forgot one. I don't know. I don't think.
And I love the fact that it is named after a character from Edward Abbey's book, The Monkey Wrench Gang.
Yes. And I felt like I was getting made fun of a lot, discriminated against on the trail, because we would meet a lot of people from Utah or outdoorsy people traveling through Utah, and we'd tell them that we were hiking the Hayduke Trail. Oh, did you read the book? Nope. Haven't read it. So once I got home, I actually did read it, but I've heard it's really great to listen to an audiobook when you're out hiking the Hayduke, but I wasn't able to do that. Good book. Definitely evokes the desert spirit, desert energy. It was very well written, but yeah, the trail was quite...
You'll spend a little time on the book just for a second, because I read that book. We actually took a trip to Hawaii, and I read that book on the beach of Hawaii, and it left a lasting impression with me. I still think about that book occasionally. It'll pop up in my head.
Mhm.
It was an early version or an early story of eco-terrorism and protecting the national parks, protecting the outdoor beauty of our land out there, and really some memorable characters and some memorable events that took place in that book. So George Hayduke, I think, is very appropriate for the name of that trail.
Hmm. And you'll appreciate it even more when you hike the trail, Doc, because then you can go through all the parts of like, oh, this is where this happened. This is where Hayduke did this crazy thing. This is where they met and planned their next terrorist attack. So it was a really good book, but
Well,
it's really fun.
I'm not gonna do the Hayduke unless I have
Yeah.
a trail guide with me. Get that back healthy, horsepower.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. So tell me about your time on the Hayduke.
Yes. And so also this is I don't know, a little precautionary tale. I still personally would not recommend doing it alone. I knew going into it I didn't want to do the Hayduke Trail alone, just given the slight climbing, slight canyoneering. It's not a ton. It's only here and there. But just given the difficulty and potential danger of breaking your ankle down in a canyon, your GPS signal's not going to get out. No help's going to come for days because people don't really go to these areas. First off the bat, I would recommend doing it with a partner, with somebody else. So that being said, I knew I didn't want to do it alone, and I did find a partner to do it with, absolute beast of a person named Fancy Feast, and she was a trooper the whole time. We struggled so much together. We went through a lot of hardship on this, I don't know what to call it, devil of a trail. But yeah, it was a lot. It's about 800 miles of brutality nonstop. Water was tough. Information was hard to come by on the trail. Information about water, especially. And yeah, it was a sufferfest the whole time. But that being said, it is also some of the most beautiful hiking I've ever done. Utah is, and northern Arizona is unlike most other places in the US. And a lot of times it's hard to believe what you're looking at around you the whole time, just because it is so unusual, so beautiful. The desert is amazing. The canyons are amazing. The rivers are amazing, even though they're brown, but you appreciate seeing water every once in a while here and there. And yeah, it was a incredible experience just with a high entry cost.
Now, did you know Fancy Feast before you began the trip?
I did not. So we just met. Actually, it's funny enough, we met on like the trail register for the Grand Enchantment Trail because I was thinking about doing that instead if I couldn't find a partner to do the Hayduke with, and then ended up talking her into joining me on the Hayduke. So we got to know each other pretty well, suffering nonstop on the Hayduke.
Now, when people are out there on the trail suffering together, there is some degree of trauma bonding going on. How close are you and Fancy Feast now?
I'd say it's similar to most other people that hike together. You can just, it's not like I'm not trying to describe it. You've been through so much together. You can look back at any event and just laugh at how ridiculous, how terrible, how hard, how insane it was. And really you are closer, better friends just from that, being through those absurd situations together.
Now, Ginger Balls describes a time where he found himself having lowered his pack down and thrown the rope down into a canyon, and then discovering that there was no way down. I don't know if you heard that episode or not.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and so he took a literal leap of faith and jumped into the open space between the cliff top and a tree that was growing from down below, and managed to hang on and scramble down to get to his pack. Any types of moments like that, or any encounters with the much dreaded quicksand?
Also, it's funny about that story because like the first thing they say in the guidebook is do not jump down anything you cannot climb back up. That is like rule number 1 of the Hayduke. So it's funny that he did the one thing you're not supposed to do. But yeah, there were a couple things. Also, another huge benefit of having a hiking partner is more so in that safety realm, just being able to climb things easier. I think we only had to drop our packs with ropes like once most of the time for the climbs we had to do. One person could just climb it, and then we could hand up one pack to another person so you wouldn't have to deal with rope or dropping a rope down. One person could climb first, scout it out, rather than having to drop your pack with no way back, no return. So that's another reason to have a partner. And then as far as quicksand, yes, it is very real.
That's a real thing?
Yeah. On the first day, actually, we dealt with quicksand in Courthouse Wash and Arches National Park. And there were a couple other times that you step in it if your shoes aren't tied tight, you might run into trouble. But really, as long as you're halfway smart and keep moving, you'll be all right.
So I thought quicksand was just something that appeared in the Three Stooges. It actually exists. And Scooby-Doo, that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's real. It's always a little alarming, but especially at first after having never dealt with it before, because you feel like you're not going to get out. But as long as you keep moving, you'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those stories out of the Pacific Northwest Trail and the Hayduke Trail. Those are some doozies. Let's spend a little time on, you mentioned earlier, you're working on a book. What is the book about?
Yeah, so it is basically a retelling of the calendar year Triple Crown entire year from leaving until, spoiler, when I quit and didn't finish the 10,000 miles on the Buckeye Trail. It's basically just a retelling of that whole year, all the hardships, all the struggles, all the great rewards, all the awesome people I met, all the kind strangers that helped me out, and basically just every single thing that happened that year and then all the thoughts that ran through my head during it.
Now, how are you organizing the book? Is it chronological? Is it by trail? Is it thematically arranged? What do you think?
It's all chronological. I wanted the book to almost feel like a thru hike, whereas in the beginning, also it was my first thru hike. So in the beginning, everything still seems so new, everything's so novel. But then as the year goes on, you turn into more of a machine. The book gets a little more refined as it goes on. And by the end of the year, there's a lot more introspection, a lot more reflecting on what the year has been so far, rather than at the beginning so much as worrying about what's yet to come.
And do you have a working title for it?
This is going to hurt.
Why is it going to hurt? That's the working title.
Yeah, you got to read to find out.
Fantastic. You were talking a little bit earlier as you were going through your stories on the Pacific Northwest Trail and the Hayduke Trail, and you mentioned Precautionary Tales. And I'm always on the lookout for a trail name for the episode, and I think we stumbled across it. This is Precautionary Tales with horsepower.
I can't talk either. Precautionary Tales of the Trails.
There you go. All right. Hey, when does the book come out?
I'm shooting for September 20th.
Okay, that's coming up.
Yep.
In fact, when this episode airs, that'll probably just be a few days away. So how do people get their orders in to get It's Gonna Hurt?
This is gonna hurt.
This is gonna hurt.
Yep, you can just go on Amazon, and it should be pretty easy to get there. It'll be in both paperback and an ebook Kindle version.
Okay, and who have you been working with to put this together?
Just myself and a few people helping out edit here and there, but mostly myself, and I'm just self-publishing.
Okay, and how are your English skills?
Fine, I'd say.
Is Fancy Feast, is she a good editor?
She helped me out a little bit, but mainly you got somebody on Fiverr to help out too. They didn't do a great job, but it's been a little bit here and there all over, just trying to get this thing out and finished up.
Okay, you said Fiverr?
Yeah,
I just know I know they're from doing like a little bit of voiceover work.
Yeah, they can really do anything. They do that. I got my book cover from a person there. They can really do about anything you need done.
Nice. Now, I've been dying to know the whole time we've been talking, where are you calling in from? You look like you're in some office building. You got like a T-square drop ceiling there behind you. You got some speakers in the ceiling. It looks like are you calling in from the real estate office?
Nope. Back home, just in the basement.
Okay, that's the basement. Got it. So
you probably don't have those over in California, do you?
No, you're in Ohio right now.
Yeah, everybody's got a basement.
Got it. What's the temperature in Ohio these days?
Cooled down this week. It was in the 90s for, I don't know, a week or two, but now it's back down in the 80s, pretty comfortable.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. We wish you the very best on the book venture. I can't wait to get a copy of it and work my way through the calendar year Triple Crown with you.
Sounds great. Hope you enjoy it.
Okay. Hey, Horsepower, you know where we are?
The Hiking Hack.
Oh, you're a pro.
Yep.
Hiking hacks.
You've either been on the podcast so many times, you've listened to many times, you know exactly where we are. So this is where you get to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. What do you have?
Oh boy. Yep, probably should have prepared this one as we've been talking, so I forgot. But
That's my gift. That's my gift of taking your mind off things.
yeah, I'll go. My piece of advice is mainly just derived from something that I refused to do for a long time, and then finally realized how stupid I was for not doing it. I don't care how ultralight you're trying to be. I don't care how efficient you're trying to have your pack. Just bring, if you're using a Sawyer, just bring the back flush syringe device, whatever you want to call it, with you. For most of the calendar year Triple Crown, I didn't bring it just because I didn't want to worry about another thing to carry, the weight, or having to take time to back flush my filter. But by the time I would get done with near the end of a trail, it would take me like over 10 minutes to filter 1 liter of water with a Sawyer. So starting last year, I started to actually bring the back flush syringe with me to clean it out every so often whenever I got into town, basically, and was much more responsible with doing that. And life was just so much more enjoyable being able to filter water at a healthy clip rather than sitting there for a half hour to filter 3 liters of water and just wasting so much time and draining my forearms when I'm already tired. So folks, just bring the syringe, just bring the back flush device, and it'll save you time, happiness, or it'll make you more happy. And yeah, it'll be a great investment.
That is a great hiking hack. I will tell you, we are partners with Sawyer. I love the people at Sawyer, Travis, Lindsay, and Katie. If you ask them, they'll tell you, use the syringe, back flush your filter so that it works at a reasonable clip.
It's there for a reason.
It's there for a reason. All right. So there you have it. We are just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Horsepower. I want to thank you for joining us this week. Brandon, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures, either out on the trail or in the real estate office?
Yeah, the main social media I use is just Instagram, so you can find me there at Natural Horsepower. That's really all I use. However, by the time this podcast is out, my website should be launched, which is just a basic encapsulation of all my adventures, and that's just going to be naturalhorsepower.com, but it's going to be a Wix website, so keep an eye out for that too.
So this is going to hurt.com. That's a totally different website. Not sure anybody wants to log on to that one.
Yeah, I haven't checked that one out, but I'm not sure what content's going to be there.
That could be dangerous. Yeah. All right. Hey, remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We're on FaceTube. We're on FaceTube and a YouBook, Instagram, and TikTok.
You are a dad, aren't you?
That's right. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, Brandon, we can't always be on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by in those moments off the trail. This could be a book, a movie, documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. Any recommendations in terms of adventure media?
Oh, boy. I'm trying to think now.
You've already mentioned the Monkey Wrench gang.
Yeah. Yeah, along those same lines, there's another Edward Abbey book because I can't think of anything else right now. Desert Solitaire is also a great read. It's basically the nonfiction version of the Monkey Wrench gang and just the outdoor public lands of Utah and northern Arizona.
Okay. I've heard of that one. I have not had a chance to read it yet. You'd recommend that?
I would. It's a good read.
Okay.
It'll make you want to go to the desert.
Nice. Hey, if you have a chance, Mrs. Doc and I watched on Netflix last night, The Deepest Breath. Have you heard of that one?
Is that a diving thing?
Yeah, free diving. You're crazy. You're 41, but they're easily in the teens. That is nuts.
I don't mess around with water.
Only quicksand.
Yeah.
Okay.
What have we not asked you?
All right. And before we wrap things up tonight, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're dying to tell us about? What did we miss tonight?
We covered the grizzly bear story. That was probably the big one. What have you not asked me? What is the worst thing that Utah and Idaho have in common?
Okay, this sounds like a knife joke. Go ahead. What is the worst thing that Idaho and Utah have in common?
Hitchhiking is technically illegal in both of them. So I did have a run in Idaho. Actually, the morning after the grizzly bear incident, no, sorry, 2 mornings after, I don't know, sometime around the grizzly bear incident with the police in Idaho because I was trying to hitchhike back out of town and they stopped to talk to me and to tell me I can't hitchhike. And then I said, okay, there's this national scenic trail that runs 10 miles north of your town and probably dozens of people hitchhike to and from this town every year. You just might not know about it. And I think they just thought I was on drugs or something because they basically just told me to shut up and start walking out of town. So I started walking out of town, and then they circled the block about every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure I wasn't hitchhiking. So it was about 98 degrees too, of course, walking on pavement. So I walked probably a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles before, without my thumb out because they were checking constantly, before a truck finally stopped and pulled over and offered me a ride. And he only offered me a ride because he actually thought I was doing the Pacific Crest Trail because one of his buddies was doing that. But I had to explain to him, actually, Pacific Northwest Trail. But he still gave me a ride all the same. And yeah, I was very mad at the police that day.
The police didn't chase down the car that gave you a ride and write him up and take you and put you in cuffs?
Nope, they couldn't find us. We were too fast.
Lucky. Now, when I asked you what the most unfriendliest state was, you said Massachusetts. It could have been Idaho.
It could have been. The thing is, that was the only one encounter I had, though, but it was very bad and really soured me on the state. But I tried not to think about it too much. Don't want to ruin a whole state from one person. But
yeah, that's probably good advice too. Don't let one encounter with a very small population of the entire state turn you sour.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a lot of great people in Idaho.
I'm sure. Just not that one.
All right. Hey, we are finished. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Horsepower. Always a pleasure to talk to you, buddy. We wish you the very best in your future endeavors in the real estate office. Want your back to get healed so you and I can go out there and do the Hayduke.
Sounds great. Thank you, Doc.
Right. And would you consider coming back on a future episode, maybe with Constantine and Professor? We'll talk about the Sheltowee trace.
Correct. And yeah, that'd be a great time.
Okay. As we close up, any shout outs to friends and family?
Shout out Hammer. Shout out Fancy Feast. Shout out Professor and Constantine. Pretty much the only people I've hiked a considerable distance with. All the other stuff has been mostly alone. So those are my hiking buddies and hope they're all doing great.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you spent last night in a shouting altercation with a grizzly bear. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.